Hey, you guys, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Dad Bods, Dad Boss, the show where we talk all things related to man, being a man, being a man, being a dad, and a business owner in today's world. And so, you know, just quickly, like yesterday, I was up in Newcastle and I was there supporting my brother-in-law because he decided 16 weeks ago, he decided to do a marathon. And yesterday was the day where he put all of his preparation and all of his training into action, we're going to be talking about like how comfort, is the ultimate killer in today's world, right? In the modern man, um, and how, you know, how continually to push yourself, right? And choosing the harder option or choosing to suffer is actually beneficial to you being a successful business owner, to you being a successful man, and to you being a successful dad, and how our kids can benefit from that as well. So before we get into it, normally there's the three amigos here. You know, Eric texted us. He says there's like a school thing happening. Sophia's not even in school, man. So
No kids are in school at the moment. It's holiday.
yeah, it's holidays. So it's just us two. I'm Q, guys, one of your co-hosts, and then we also have Mr. Frigate Bird. How are you, Mr. Frigate Bird?
Frigate. Tell me what a frigate bird does, Quang.
I don't know, man. I just have a list of exotic birds, and Frigate Bird was on it.
I'm happy to be exotic today. Sure. I am very well. I'd like to say I'm good. Body's a bit sore. Game of rugby on Saturday was very physical, and but yeah, no, I'm on the mend. I'm on the mend.
Yeah. So guys, Shane hasn't. If you're watching this, like Shane hasn't gone all Indian on us. Like he's just got a cut on his nose. That's all. There's no significance behind that red dot on his face.
Moving to India, mate. New Delhi. Look out, here I come.
Oh, I love this. So hey, let's kick this off. Let's kick this off, my man. So look, Tony, my brother-in-law, he's not an elite athlete or anything, right? He's a regular guy like us, you know, has a mortgage, works in business, used to be a baker, and 16 weeks ago he just decided to he decided he needed a challenge, decided he needed a mountain to climb, so to speak. So um as we are guys, Shane and I, we're people in business. We've got a family, and on top of like living life, like our plates are already full, right? We're busy enough, right? But through all of that busyness, through all of that business, there's probably a little message in there, right? Bit of white noise that you need to do something to either reset yourself or to challenge yourself or to maybe just get out of your everyday comfort zone, right? And so, uh, you know, part of what we're going to talk about today is that in this day and age, there's so much stress that's going on, or perceived stress, right? That is impacting our health and everything else in between. And so sometimes we need to find a way to take control back, and we might need to rewire our brain, right? To perhaps seek that friction instead of avoiding it. And so we've got Shane, Mr. I would say he's world class in being able to communicate and articulate, you know, how our brain works, the science behind it. And so, Shane, whenever someone says they're gonna like do a marathon, I don't know about you, but the first thing that goes through my mind is like, you're nuts, right? You're nuts. And then part of it, and then after that initial impulse is like, oh, I wonder if I can do that, right? I wonder if I can run 42 Ks. So uh, from like I guess the from your perspective, from your experiences, Shane, like um what what stems from, I guess, and especially as men, right? What stems or what makes us feel the urge or the need to just test ourselves, and sometimes it's physical. We seek that physical challenge, right? Like whether it's 75 hard, a marathon, or doing 100 push-ups. What is that primal thing that makes us want to test ourselves?
Oh, what a question. I think I talk about it a lot. Like we talk about like getting out of the comfort zone is really important because if
Mm,
you don't, then you sort of just stay where you are. I look at it like this, like it all starts around confidence as well. Like I quote up
mm,
here that confidence is a big disbelief. Like that having confidence is a disbelief because what we go is, oh, if I'm confident, then I will do that. But the truth is, right now, whatever, because you spoke about the comfort zone, whatever you have in your
mm.
comfort zone right now, you can confidently deal with, and which means I have
Yeah,
confidence there. So what that really means is, if I'm confident, I can stay in my comfort zone. But if I stay in
mm,
my comfort zone, then I become complacent. If I become complacent, then I stop growing. And this is where this question that you ask kicks in. If I stop growing, we all know that anything that stops growing is dying.
yep,
And in actual fact, if something stopped growing, there's a part of it that's already dead.
yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, so we have this innate desire inside of ourselves, especially as men. I'm not just counting women by any chance, but in this
Mm,
conversation here, of we want to grow so we don't get left behind,
mm,
right? So this is a good thing. This is a really good thing. Is like, oh, cool. I'm going to challenge myself to go and do something else, to become someone else, or to grow in some area of my life,
yep,
because then that way I keep up with society. Like at the end of
yep,
the day, it is with society because society's outgrown us, right? So if you're not growing in any form right now in your life, you're going to feel stuck
yeah,
and you're going to feel depleted. And what most people do, or not most people, a lot of people do, is they just go, oh well, this is just the way it is, and they settle.
yeah,
And then what happens is society continues to grow. Things like stuff in Iran happens, fuel prices go up, and now I've been complacent for 4 years, just living a comfortable life, staying on the same wage, but all the cost of living's gone up, and now I'm struggling. Which is
yeah,
normally where the pain will kick in and go, oh, now I need to grow myself to be able to get myself to the next level. But then
yeah.
that comes the problem with that is then it's driven by pain rather than by
Mm,
pleasure. Now I know you obviously I know Tony as well, and I had a conversation around that with him. And initially, like his health journey, I guess started through a painful experience, but
yep,
now it's transitioned to where he's pulled towards because he's seen the positive benefits of being fitter. And it was just, I said to him, I said, oh, what was the reason for the goal? And he goes, it was just the next evolution of my health journey,
yeah,
but he did it for the right reasons. And now he knows that he's grown into this. Now he's a marathon runner. He's one of only 1% in the world who run
yep,
marathons or complete a marathon. So then it's like, well, cool, I've done that because I knew that I was going to grow as well as a human being. So I think the big reason to answer your question, why do we do that?
yeah.
Because we have an innate desire to grow because we don't want to get left behind. But are we taking on that challenge out of pain or are we taking it out of
Mm,
pleasure? Because there's a big difference on the likelihood of you achieving it, the likelihood of it becoming sustainable long term. If it's pain driven and I'm just going to grind it out or I'm just going to muscle my way through, it's probably not going to last. But if you
mm,
find a way to be pulled towards that level of growth in whichever area of life you're talking about, health,
yep,
relationships, business, whatever, it doesn't matter. Then you're gonna go much further, much further. Because look, I think about it. If I was someone said to me, "Should we run a marathon?" I'd probably do it the hard way and just go, "Oh yeah, I'll just grind it out for on marathon day for 42." Now I wouldn't just show up. I would
yeah,
do some training, but I wouldn't do the level of training that I saw with what
yep,
Tony, like he had such an in-depth level of training there,
yeah,
and I,
yeah. So true. Yeah.
which means I wouldn't have carried on. I wouldn't, but I know TK's sort of thinking, well, actually, what else can I do going forward from here?
Yeah, yeah, and and I love how you said that. It's kind of like the intent behind it as well, like the core motivator. Because you and I, we both know people who've done 75 hard 6 times, right? Right?
Yeah, only made 75 days total out of the 6 attempts.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because they want to use it as the confidence, like to seek that reassurance or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, right, it's still that pain. If you're doing that multiple times, it means you still need looking for that kickstart, right?
Mm,
Right. If you're still looking for the kickstart, it means you're still working in a pain-driven, motivation strategy, which means you can do it 10 times. But what's going to happen is you're not going to learn or you're not going to gain anything from that because you're still driven in using the wrong levers to be driven by that. You know. So like continuing on that, right, then Shane, um, when we continually push ourselves, right, and when we continually do the physically hard shit, right? Um, what are the traits that kind of like we develop? Because you mentioned confidence there, and we just kind of like, give or take either way. But I know resilience is one thing, and grit. Outside of that, like what are some other traits that we develop along the way by stepping out of our comfort zone?
Oh, well, I think I like the resilience one because, you're stretching yourself, you're pushing yourself, you're putting in those uncomfortable situations
Yeah,
in order to be able to adapt to them as well. I think another one would be, well, there's obviously, I don't know if it's really a trait, but it's that desire to grow and become more is
yeah,
really important, which is really important. So it's really about like looking for opportunities because as you grow into someone else, other opportunities are going to present itself to you. So it's really important to like if you're stuck in life, it's because you're not being exposed to enough opportunities, which really means you're not exposing yourself to other opportunities. So it's going to bring those other opportunities to yourself as well. So it's really important to think about like, okay, if what else do I want in my life, and how can I put myself in those environments to be able to be presented with those opportunities as well. I think what was the question? What are the traits that you create?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like well, we can talk about the word grit. I kind of steer away
Mm,
from the word grit a little bit because
okay.
again, it's a push energy, like it's a push
Yep.
energy type language, which means it's like, oh, I have to do this. I'll just grit it out. I'll grind it out.
Yeah.
Instead of going, how can I be smart about this to make this sustainable? And that's
Yeah.
like, again, we talk about 75, even the label of it, 75 hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Then why would I do something that's hard in the hope that I become someone else?
Yeah.
What we want to think about is like, okay, if I imagine in 75 days who I'm going to be if I do the 75 hard, well, why don't I just start adapting those behaviors, habits, and traits as a human now and transition myself so it's a natural transition into that thing. So it's not an identity shock. If you start the 75 hard today, it's an identity shock. You got to do this and this and this and this and this. It's such a
Yep.
big transition for you. Everything inside of you is going to be screaming stop because it's so
Yep.
different. But if you see in 75 days to transition yourself into that new version of yourself,
Mm,
then the next 75 is where you'll really build that body that you were probably seeking by doing the 75 hard.
mm,
But it'll be sustainable. You'll be 5 months into it, and now it'll become a part of who you are rather than doing the 75 day run or the 75 hard. And then you get to the end, and what do most people do? Straight back to the pie shop on day
yeah.
76, straight back to a can of
Yeah.
Coke. Just like the biggest loser. I don't know what the stats are, but there's a very high number of them that go ahead and put the weight back on. In fact, they put more
Yeah.
back on
Yeah.
because they did it in a short period of time and it was in an intense situation, but
Yep.
they didn't change the identity of who they were.
Yeah. 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 And it's funny you mention that because I think on Netflix there's a documentary that shows like the after, right?
Mm,
And there's so many of them have put the weight back on,
mm,
and even the winners who've won it previously have put the weight on
yeah,
because of that environment that a contact created. And a lot of the feedback from those past participants were like, hey, they didn't support us afterwards to help us maintain because we were lost, right? So
that's why they started doing it as families actually, because they were all just doing it
mm,
individuals, and they knew that as soon as they went home, they went back into the environment of what was
yeah,
the old lifestyle, and straight away
yep,
they put the weight back on. So that's why they started doing it as families. I'd be interested to see the stats on the individual stats of
mm,
going back to the original weight versus the family stat. Same thing
yeah,
though, even if you get the family, they all go back to the same home and
yep,
they're in the same environment, they fall back into the same habits,
yep,
then very high chance they'll go back to the same weight. But I'd be interested
yep,
to see the difference actually in
yeah,
the ratio of people that did keep the weight off.
yeah, wicked, wicked. And so like we mentioned that you know something like that, running a marathon or a big challenging physical event like that might need some preparation, right? To be actually complete it, because like you don't just wake up and run 42 Ks, right? Well, some people did. What I saw at the event yesterday, I think they literally just woke up, put on a pair of shorts, and thought they were going to run the whole marathon, right? So, because it's project, some physical challenge like that. It's project management in its purest form, right? And in business, it's the same, Shane, as you would know, right? Um, ASIC, they've got some data that says 40% of small businesses in Australia fail due to poor strategic management or a lack of a concrete business plan or a lack of a plan in general. So people wing it. People wing it, and like the marathon, you can't wing a marathon. Yeah. And you can't wing achieving a multi-million dollar business. So, like for example, Tony had had it all mapped out when in the marathon, when he was going to do the gels, when he was going to have hydration, all that kind of stuff, right? And it sounds insane, but like that level of planning is also required for business success as well, right? So, um, when you're planning for something like either business success or like a challenging event like that, and you work with like a lot of like you know I guess new business owners, right? Um, what kind of like plan or what do you put in place to help them succeed? And like what are the, I guess on the flip side of that is it really like don't have a plan and you won't succeed that you've seen, Shane?
Look, yeah, planning is essential. And what do you do to start out? Is you find out like what can they do. So if I was going
Mm,
to run a marathon, I'd probably run 3 kilometers for my first run.
yep.
Like I'm not even going to run 10 kilometers because that's going to be a massive stretch for me. And it's the same in business. Is like, okay, what are the basic foundations that I need in place or that they need in place in order to be able to establish themselves so they've got a solid base and then build from there. Because if you just go in and try and do the high level stuff straight away, then it's probably gonna fall over because same thing. If you just like if I went out and tried to run 20 kilometers now,
Mm,
it would not end well, right? Not even if I had the flashiest shoes, you know what I mean? All the
yeah.
running, it doesn't matter. All the You can have all the equipment, but if you don't have the solid foundation in place of
Yeah.
understanding, business in itself, and in fact, if in the space that we work in, see a lot of people come in want to be a coach. They want to be a coach, but they don't understand the identity of a business owner as a coach,
Mm,
and this is where they fall short, right? So definitely get those foundations right of what it takes to run a business and then build from there because otherwise it's going to be super hard for you later on or something's going to break.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I heard I forget who I heard this from recently, but it applies to business. So, and Shane, did you know that a tree grows up and it grows down at the same time?
Did you just watch the Myron Golden?
Oh, that's what it is. That's what I heard from. And I thought like that totally makes sense, right? That
That's why
totally makes sense.
I was 2 minutes late because I was watching that clip.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, yeah, incredible, and it's a great metaphor. I mean, you can share it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, like it grows like simultaneously up and down, right? And he was saying like if you ever look at the roots, it looks exactly like the mirror image of the branches and the leaves. But it grows down because it needs to put in those strong foundations, get all the nutrients and all that kind of stuff, do all the dirty work in the dark that no one sees, so that it can sprout the fruit and the flowers and everything above. But everyone only ever wants the flowers, right? And the fruit without
yeah,
doing the dirty work. So 100% like, planning is part of the dirty work that no one sees. And, and sometimes it is confronting or it is like, boring, but confronting is the main thing because they don't want to know all of the work that it entails, you know, to be successful
yeah,
because being in business, as you know, Shane, like it's not easy. It has its moments where it's really hard and tricky and all of those things, and it can be lonely and everything else in between. But they just want to avoid that, and they just want to be able to pick the fruit already, right? And I thought exactly what you said there. Like we need to like put in the work, the dirty reps like do the work in the dark that no one can see, so that you can flower and shine on the other side as well, which is powerful, yeah.
yeah, 100%. I think the real key lesson out of that was like nobody really sees the dirty, dark stuff that happens underground,
Yeah.
which the seed has to sprout. It has to grow its roots first
Mm.
before it even gets above the ground.
Bears any leaves or
Yeah,
branches at all, right?
and for
Uh,
a fruit tree, you're looking at probably 5 years before the fruit
yeah,
even grows, and
yeah,
then another good number of years before it grows a big, massive crop of fruit as well. So,
yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. Love that, man. Love that, mate. Like we do have good taste, don't we?
Same algorithm, mate. I was on your account. Oh, whoops.
And the final thing we'll dive into, Shane, is we're business owners, we're men, but we're also fathers. Especially with you, with little Leif, on the scene now, as well as your older kids. But now you've kind of like got an opportunity to kind of like, do things differently this time around as well, or do things in a new way, right? Because we just know more these days, right? We know more than we did previously, and so when we challenge ourselves, when we you know um, take ourselves out of our comfort zones, right? That leaves an imprint on our kids, right? Because they see us being physical, they see us stepping out of ourselves. And one of the things that I was listening to from like a parent expert is like, one of the reasons why kids are obese they're more obese these days is because they just model what what the parents are doing. So if the parents are just sitting on the couch and answering emails or watching TV or on their computer, that's what the kids are going to do. So if we want our kids to be resilient, if we want our kids to understand delayed gratification, we can't just like lecture them. We actually have to embody it, right? And so the thing is, like, I don't know about you, Shane, but I don't want blisters on my feet.
Well, I've got just the answer for you then. You don't have to run for 4.5 hours. Just strap on a pair of rugby boots and play for 80 minutes, mate.
Yeah, I
You'll
don't,
be wishing you had blisters on your feet.
yeah, that's it. I don't want a red dot on my face, man. But also, like, part of that as well is we don't like, especially with like, you got a newborn. We also don't. We want to spend as much time with our family as possible as well, right? So, like, for you, Shane, like, how do you balance I guess the selfish time required to train for something, right? Versus like the guilt of perhaps being away from our family.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Jade and I talk about this anyway, but we both know that rugby is a great outlet. Like it's a great way for me
Mm,
to put out any frustration or anger or anything like that. So I can then even just running that training, like even just going to trainings every
yeah,
Tuesday, Thursday is really good for me because it's my outlet. So then I can kind of reset myself. No, I'm not saying you have to play rugby. Other
yeah,
people do it through running, other people do it through many different things, right? But it's my way of doing that. And then on Saturdays, like well, most Saturdays, Jade will come down and watch, and then Ezra can hang out with me as
yeah.
well. And then Leif's obviously still in the wheelchair. But then even after the game, like on Saturday, Ezra stayed with me. Jay came home, so we got to hang out,
Mm,
spend more time, and then he gets to be in those environments around other people socializing. Like I was chatting to one of the boys, and then I turn around and Ezra's got a burger and a meat patty in it, and he's munching away on that. And one of the boys from the rugby team had just set him up with a feed. So it was all, it's a great way. It's beneficial in many different ways because it brings a sense of community, a sense of interacting, as well
yeah,
as shows. I guess the other big thing I was just going to touch on too was like doing it as a parent. It shows like getting out is really good for you, obviously,
yeah,
interacting, but also from those setbacks because we didn't win on Saturday, but we talk about the loss and we can talk about how we're
yeah,
going to bounce back, and he can see that our dad's going back even though he got thumped on Saturday, right? And
yeah.
it's about really making sure that they get the lessons out of that it's the failures you might say or the losses that you have in life.
Yeah, 100%, right? And um, you and I both know parents who live vicariously through their kids, right?
Yeah.
And and want them to be the best and want them to have that resilience and want them to like, you know, get back up, but they have to learn that from somewhere,
Mm.
you know. And they can't you can't expect like them to learn off their teammates because their teammates are just kids themselves, right?
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we are that person that embodies all those behavioral traits, values, or whatever it is we want our kids to learn. We need to embody that so that they can learn it from us because, as you would know, like we are like, from all of your NLP trainings and all that kind of stuff, like kids see us as like the superhero for that initial period of their life, right? So this is where we can leave the biggest imprint. So we just need to make sure that we are the ones who are demonstrating, all of the things that we want them to have later on down the road.
Yeah.
So powerful, so powerful. Um, so Hey Shane, we're gonna wrap it up. Is there anything else that we need to like you want to that's on your mind besides your red dot?
I got nothing.
Just the red dot on Shane's mind today, guys. So like we always envision ourselves, crossing that finish line, getting that medal, and then celebrating afterwards. But you know, prior to that, if you want to make sure that you achieve that outcome that you want, you've just got to set set up the plan to succeed, you know, and whether that is to hit, to do a marathon, whether that's to, hit some financial milestones in your business, or whether that's to just sell your business and get the payout so you can pop the champagne, right? Um, you need to make sure that you have all of those key things, right, in place, all of those, the plan, all of the support, so that you can put your best foot forward to give it your best shot. And it's not always about winning, right? I like to say, Shane, you probably say it's never about the winning. It's about what you gain on the way, right?
I'll finish it by saying it's about who you become.
Oh, even better. Because as we said before, motivation is garbage, right? But the only thing that's going to move the needle is the discipline. So on that note, like stay sharp, stay savage, and keep leading from the front. Dad Bods, Dad Boss signing out.
That's how we roll.
Oh yeah.